Chapter 1. Run. I opened my eyes to see the warm belly I was nestled into. This warm creature was my mother. I felt her wet nose nudge me, and I looked up into her bright blue eyes.
Were mine blue?
I thought. Her warm tongue licked between my tiny ears. I barked and tried to get my small legs under me. I flopped back down onto my haunches, for there was white stuff under my paws. Snow, she had called it once. My mother snorted, turning her laughing eyes away from me and to my brothers and sisters scuffling on the ground. They already could do everything. Their legs were strong and could hold their weight because they had been playing long in the snow, getting used to the slipperiness. I shot to my feet trying to go play with them, but fell down face first into the snow. I could hear my brothers and sisters' laughter and yips. I yanked my head out of the snow and fell back on my butt. I glared at all of them. They didn't seem to notice my anger, for they went back to playing. I sighed, laying down and resting my head on my paws. They didn't want to play with me. I raised my head with sudden excitement. They could play while I guarded them. I stood up slowly, making sure my legs could hold me this time. When I didn't tumble down onto the snow again, I raced forward and jumped onto a snow-covered rock. I sat down and looked out as far as I could see through the trees ahead. This was our home. I would protect it with my life. I perked my ears and listened out for any sound that wasn't normal. Everything was quiet besides the squeaks from my brothers and sisters and my mother washing her paws. I looked all around, making sure nothing stealthy was trying to approach. My ear flicked backward, and I heard crunching paw steps coming from behind me. I sighed. Couldn't I try to protect everyone without getting bothered? I sniffed the air, smelling the familiar scent. It was Stripe, my brother, that had a brown stripe running down his back. I bared my teeth straight-headed, but prepared myself for his pounce. It didn't take him long, for he had no patience. He leaped and knocked me off my rock. Before we touched the ground, I spun and had him underneath me, so when we landed in the snow, I had him pinned down in it. He tried to pull away from me, but I held him down completely.
Okay, I give!
He breathed, going limp beneath me. I eased off him and flicked my tail in irritation. I heard my other brothers and sisters laughing at his failing on their stupid mission for him. I knew who had told him to do it. It was my oldest brother, Broad. He had a huge chest and stood tall. That was how he had gotten his name. He ruled over all the others because no one wanted to relinquish his hold over being boss. I wasn't in his tiny pack and was tired of him sending the others to get into trouble while he sat and watched. I snarled and stalked over to the circle of deer dung. They all stopped laughing and looked at me. Broad held his head up, thinking he was the toughest just because he was oldest, yet he had never fought me. I had always wanted to, so I could wipe that stupid smirk off his muzzle. I snarled and glared at him.
Come on, guys. Let's do something else.
He said without care, turning his back on me. The others obediently followed him, wagging their tails happily after their little master. I was so busy glaring at his stupid butt that I didn't notice the dark shadow looming over me till it was too late. There was a quick swipe of a paw, and I was on the ground. Another swipe from a paw, and I was on my back, looking into the silver eyes of my father, the lead wolf in our pack. I yelped with happiness and sprang again to my paws. I tackled straight into my father's chest with glee. He easily tumbled to the ground, laughing as I licked all over his muzzle. By the time my litter mates realized the source of my sudden happiness, Father was already standing up. His name was Silver Eyes, for that was the color of his eyes, which were not normal for wolves. He licked between my ears, and then helped me to my paws. I heard the crunching from behind us, and turned around to see the rest of our pack heading towards us. I wagged my tail as I saw a couple of deer they were dragging toward Father. We would eat well tonight. I watched his mother emerge from the cave entrance, and padded happily up to Father. She nuzzled him gentle and looked at the deer. The rest of the hunting patrol came and sat down in a circle around our camp. Another family emerged with their litter. Their kids were older than me and my litter mates, but we all still played together. Father had promised the best of our litter would hunt with them. When he was around, I tried hard to please him. I wanted to be part of the hunting party. It had always been my dream. When Father would lead a patrol out, I would watch them hungrily. I had waited for so long, but last night Father had been talking to Mother about the other litter being ready to go out hunting. The day after tomorrow, he had promised her. I blinked as my father stepped forward, pulling me from my thoughts. Mother went with him, and they both crouched down over one of the deer and started to eat. As they got the first bite, the other adults started to walk forward and eat. I sat down and sighed, then lifted my head high. I wouldn't look down, for one day I would be alpha and lead my pack into eating their meals. I looked around to see my litter mates and the other litter of wolf pups both sulking. I snorted, annoyed. They would just have to wait to be fed, or until the adults allowed us to join them. Suddenly, my father turned to stare down at both litters. I raised my chin higher. He was going to let us eat with the rest of the pack.
Black.
My father called to the oldest of the other litter that was black as midnight, not a single white spot on him. Black turned to stare at my father, hopefully. Father smiled and said,
Come eat, you and your litter mates, but mind your manners.
Black and his litter mates didn't need to be told twice. They charged forward and started eating hungrily. I looked at my dad, waiting expectantly. My father didn't even look at me as he turned away. Maybe he didn't see me, I thought. I got to my paws and said,
Father!
He turned, looking down at me and my brothers and sisters sitting behind.
What about us?
I asked. He stared down at us, then turned to talk to my mother. She whispered something softly back to him, then went back to eating. He looked behind me and said,
Go ahead, little ones.
My litter mates raced forward and started eating with my mother. I tried to walk around my father, but he swished his tail in the way.
Not you, little girl.
He said, picking me up by the scruff and setting me down farther from the meal.
Why not?
I asked sadly, staring hungrily at the meal my family and the pack were consuming.
You're not ready,
He said, turning away. I snarled angrily, my temper lost just like that. I deserved it more than the others. I was the youngest, but had helped Mother clean the bedding and had always helped watch over my litter mates. I had always done anything I could to prove I wasn't childish like the rest of them.
I deserve as much as they do.
I said, looking up at him, holding back my temper. For he was the leader after all, and even though he was still my father, I had to respect him.
You are littler and younger than they are. Your mother and I don't believe you are ready to join the hunt. You will stay a while longer, with your mother in the den. Tomorrow the other litter and your brothers and sisters will go hunting. You must stay behind and not get into trouble. Maybe in a few days you can hunt.
He turned away again. I opened my mouth to speak again, but one look from my mother, Moonshine, silenced me. I turned back toward our cave and walked inside. I didn't want to wait for Mother to rip me off a chunk of deer meat and throw it to me. I curled up into the darkest corner in the den and closed my eyes. Father wasn't being fair. I did deserve to eat as much as the rest of them. I had never gotten into trouble like the others did, so why didn't I deserve to eat along with the rest of the litter? I turned my head away from the cave entrance and put my tail over my nose. I didn't want to eat tonight. It wasn't worth the pain of having my brothers, sisters, and the other litter laughing at me, or having the adults looking down at me with pity. I had an idea. I wouldn't eat until I got to hunt. It was my plan only for me. I sighed, drifting off into a dreamless sleep. I yawned and opened my eyes to see the first rays of sunshine shining in through the cave entrance. My father was already up and leading the others out of the den. They scampered happily after him without a backwards glance. I could see my mother in her bed watching them leave proudly to go search for breakfast. As the last tiny tail disappeared from sight, she rested her head on her paws and drifted back into sleep. I turned away from the entrance with jealousy glowing in my eyes. I still hadn't forgotten what had happened last night, and wasn't going to easily. I rested my head back on my paws, but wasn't going to sleep, for I wasn't tired. Blue? I didn't move. She had let this happen. She was alpha as well, and I didn't feel like moving. I stayed as still as possible. She sighed and didn't say anything more. I knew she could scent me and still tell I was in the den and wouldn't leave without permission, but she didn't know my exact location. Hours passed before my ears perked as I caught the excited yips of the others returning. They must have caught something. I didn't move as I heard my mother leave the den to go eat. I remembered my punishment well, and I would wait it out until I could go hunt. I turned my head to stare at the cave entrance, seeing half of the excitement. Broad was standing with his chest puffed out proudly. At his feet I could see the legs of a rabbit he must have caught. He must have been fast for his first hunt. I wasn't jealous of that. When I could hunt, I would be faster. I sighed as I watched Father praising him. Father had always shown me affection, but never praise. Anger smoldered again to the surface, and I shoved it back down. I would prove myself to him until it killed me. He licked Broad gently between the ears, then turned toward the cave, getting up and walking slowly toward it.
Blue?
I heard him whisper into the darkness. I didn't move. I wasn't going to go anywhere until I deserved to be in the pack and hunt. Father sighed and stepped farther into the cave, his eyes scanning for something. Probably me.
Blue, you don't want to congratulate your brothers and sisters on their hunt?
It was the honorable thing to do. It really was. I couldn't do it, though. At the thought of seeing my littermates' teasing faces, looking down at me, not able to hunt with them, would break me into angry rage. I closed my eyes, not saying anything. I heard Father snarl.
You will never be part of the pack. You do not have respect or honor.
Everyone outside was silent. They had heard his angry words and had frozen, knowing the danger of interfering. I opened my eyes to see his fur bristling and his silver eyes shining with suppressed anger.
You will never hunt in your life.
He snapped angrily. The pack gasped and I stood up, forgetting my idea that he was leader.
You can't do that.
I snapped back angrily.
I just did.
You can't.
I said, stepping toward him, the fur rising high along my spine.
You know I am going to be a good hunter.
Not if you can't show your family respect.
He said through his teeth.
You started it by saying I wasn't ready to hunt. You had seen me 1,000 times practicing hunting in front of you. Every time you happened to be watching us, I would practice my crouch and stalking. It was all perfect. But you always had to keep your eye on Broad because he was bigger. You always told Mother size never mattered.
I took a breath as tears streamed out of my eyes and made my father blear together.
But yesterday you showed her that you lied to her. You never meant any of those words you said to her. You never wanted me a real part of the pack.
I screamed out the last of it, my breath coming in gasps. I was so tired of being told I wasn't ready or wasn't good enough. Right now, I didn't even care how much trouble I got in. I looked up as Father turned to make more space in the cave entrance.
Go! You will never be one of the pack. Get out, now!
His eyes were glowing with anger, and he was letting it all out. I was gaping at him. I didn't care about getting in trouble, but I cared about getting kicked out of the pack. No one moved outside the cave entrance.
Father.
I whispered.
Get out.
He said more evenly, flicking his tail toward the exit. I got slowly to my paws, unsure of what had just happened. I walked out the entrance into the sunlight to see everyone's eyes fixed on me. I couldn't even think to hold my head high. My brothers and sisters weren't gloating now. They stood petrified to one side around the freshly killed food. Broad's head was really low for once. He was watching the floor instead of making fun of me. I looked away from him and up at my mother's shocked face. She looked right back at me, then looked up and glared at my father over my head. Before she could say a word, he said,
Get out, Blue. You're not welcome in my pack any longer.
I turned just in time before he tried to snap his teeth down on my heels. I backed away, terrified of my angry father.
If any of my wolves see you in our territory by moon high, I command them to kill you.
He snapped his teeth toward me again, and I turned and ran. Fear raced through me as the camp stayed silent as ever. No one ran after me. No one tried to call me back. They wouldn't even try to help me stay in the pack. Tears streamed down my muzzle as I finally realized no one was trying to keep me in the pack. They had all expected this. They all wanted me gone. I ran and ran until I couldn't run anymore. There was no pack for me. I was on my own. There was no one to make me angry like Broad, or no one to follow him like Stripe. I was completely and ultimately alone.